Okay, everyone. Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome again to day 2 of our conference, Creativity in the Time of COVID, Art of Medicine, which is part of a 4-year Mellon Foundation grant, collecting all the different ways that people have turned to creative outlets during COVID, with a focus on the Black and Brown, LGBTQIA+, and disability communities. We're so proud to be able to be and excited to be sharing this work with you. This is the 4th of the exhibitions that we've been able to do, the first in which we've been able to have a full conference attached to it, and we really feel so excited to be sharing this work with you and to be talking with different artists and musicians and individuals who've been taking part in all of this. From the very start, this work in particular has been committed to disability and accessibility. And so we want to take this moment to ensure that that actually goes into this room, and to make sure that you take this moment, and I will just display my civility here, and to embrace the spasms that I will be showing you, to reclaim the floor, to stim, stretch, use the room in whatever way you feel, take breaks, and to do whatever you need to feel less pain, or as Jess likes to remind me, also if you would like to feel more pain, do so as that as well. So this is a space reminder as well. There are a number of spaces that we'd like you to explore. The first and foremost, obviously, is our exhibit space at the Lookout Gallery, but it also extends down this hallway. And one of the pieces by Hupp is there showcased. So I hope everyone's gotten a chance to go in and see it. We also be sure to follow the signs to our low sensory space with weighted blankets, stickers, fidget toys, and all sorts of, weighted blankets. Anyway, lots of things. Earplugs, all kinds of things. Take advantage of that as you need. And also in the classroom across the hall, you'll find interactive activities, including comics you can engage with. The Buzz Zine, I believe, is there. Comics, coloring books, butterfly folding, and mask embroidery, which is a crucial part of today's presentation. So numerous thanks are in order, as always, and some of you have heard this before, but there are almost too many to mention. The project is enormous, but we particularly want to say thank you to the Mellon Foundation for making this event possible, but also to the English department, ARCA, and MSU. But finally, the most enormous thanks goes to all of our partners and students and all the people who are in this room today who came out to be here and be present and listen to this amazing talk that's going to go on. We'd like to take a moment as well to acknowledge that Michigan State University occupies the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe, the Ojibwe, Three Fires Confederacy of Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi peoples, and the university resides on land ceded in the 1819 Treaty of Saginaw. To make this something more than just verbiage, we've donated today, actually it was yesterday, I'm going to do it again today, to the Wab Ajijak Press and Foundation, which is a nonprofit publisher that supports the Native American community, particularly creative work with a focus on Michigan, the Great Lakes, and Midwest. We invite you to do the same. You'll notice we use a lot of QR codes. This is on a QR code too, and so we'll pass that around. Finally, thinking about people's privacy and just different needs and preferences, we've got a lot of photography and filming going on today. If you would prefer not to be filmed or photographed, it's going to be hard not to do, but we can please take one of the beads here, and then we will make sure that your pictures or video parts of the video are not included in public video. All right, so, with that done, I would really like to welcome with deep thanks and a profound appreciation Hupp. They're a professor of studio art at Mott Community College in Flint, Michigan. Andrews is a mixed media and installation artist, working mostly with a variety of fibers, recycled, discarded, and found materials. And they are the creator of Weightbearers and Vestiges and other works that are exhibited in the Lookout. And we're really, really excited to hear from them today. Thank you so much. Okay.
Cool. Okay, well, hello everyone. Thank you for coming. First of all, I really like to make this interactive. I've got stuff up here that I'll give you a little bit of kind of how I came to make the figures that are here. But also, if at any time if you have questions or comments or anything, just feel free. And hopefully, and there should be time at the end too. So, they gave a bit of my background. I started out in metalsmithing and sculpture, and then sculpture and installation art. And installation is still my love. I work very much in figural work, and I am extremely blessed. I get to spend my days with my two passions of art and teaching, and I get to teach art. So, hey. So I teach studio, I teach foundations, I teach sculpture, and I teach art history. So the foundation of my work has always been social efficacy and engagement, and I'm interested in how art has that social efficacy to change or affect not only people coming to a gallery, but also people in their daily lives. And I tend to deal with some very difficult topics, and sometimes I think, it'd be nice to make just a pretty picture. but for some reason I just can't do that. So there we go. My current work has evolved. I recently fell in love with cardboard, both as a media and as a metaphor. And this piece, last weekend I just came back from picking it up in Philadelphia. This one's called Dad Disappearing. My dad was diagnosed with the mixed mode dementia almost 3 years ago now. And if anyone's had that experience of a friend or family member, it is a very difficult thing to see kind of the person you knew disappearing in front of your eyes. My dad was a car person, worked in the auto industry all his life, raced cars when he was young, and I took him to a car show in Flint a couple months ago, or in August, and he couldn't remember any of his car knowledge. I was like, and it's such a central thing, and that central thing is like, so we discussed car colors. But it's still in there a little bit though. It's like if you didn't think about it, he could say, oh, that's a Camaro. But if you asked him and you had to think about it, you couldn't remember. But yeah, something that was so central for so long. He built his own car. So this one came out of that experience. And these figures I begin really exploring the idea of who is invisible and who is visible in our society and culture as a whole. So yeah, that's where my work is going right now. Let's see, like I said, my passion teaching. I'm always passionate about what my students do, and I want them to be passionate, and I want them to realize that what they're doing is important. Oh, you're an art major, how are you going to make a living doing that? Or what are you going to do with that? But it's important, and you're here, so obviously you realize how important art is, and the humanities. This is a figure that came out of the series leading up to the pieces that are here. This one is from a Suffer Little Children series. He's made out of a ballistics fabric, and he has Skittles and an Arizona iced tea on his desk. If anyone, I was always interested in how many people recognize those objects with Trayvon Martin. I do, like I said, I do deal with some very difficult topics. Some of the drawings, the beginning of this project started with me drawing children in very precarious situations. Started with me drawing children in the Syrian war. I came up with this idea, and I remembered it in the morning. I got up, got my laptop open, typed in dead children in Syria, closed the desktop, and cried, and came back to it a couple days later, and did not type the word dead in. So no, it's not quite that graphic, but if at any time you feel you need to leave or not, and I don't plan on staying on very long, I am by no way going to be offended or anything. But Suffer the Little Children started as a series of portraits of Syrian, Yemeni, Iraqi, Palestinian, and then it branched out to refugee camps and basically children in war-torn countries. When I started this, it was al-Assad's attacking of his own people that inspired me. I just came out of a long, several-year project of dealing with water and the water crisis in Flint with the lead and such. And so I didn't have a direction yet of where to go, but I started drawing trans individuals who were murdered. So I spent, I think it was 2016, all of 2016, drawing portraits of every reported trans individual that was murdered. And then I was doing both on those, and then started drawing the children in precarious situations. The one that really grabbed me and got me to do this was a photograph I saw here of a brother and sister. The boy is 3 years old. He's covering and protecting his sister, a 3-year-old, during a bombing. And I made a sculpture related to this that was with the water, and then a drawing, but that drawing really started me. And this is a individual who he's carrying his twin sons that were killed in a bombing. Vidya, 4 years old, was the camera person, and went to take a picture of her, and she thought it was a gun. So she put her hands up. And then children that were wounded. And then as I'm doing these drawings, we had migrants that were trying to get out of Africa and the Middle East and risking their lives on the Mediterranean. So you had many dying and drowning, and a lot of them being saved. And then we had our own borders, and the person in charge at that time putting children into cages with only the emergency Mylar blankets. And so this was one, when I started seeing that, the kids in cages, I started my first Suffer the Little Children sculpture, where I sculpted a child that was covered in the Mylar blanket and in a dog kennel. And then the pandemic hit. And so now, not only do children in war and refugee camps and at our own borders, now we have children getting sick and dying from the pandemic on top of all those things. And then, so Jordan refugees covering their mouth, or their faces, because there's no masks. They're in a classroom, I believe. And then, it's been such a busy few years, hasn't it? And then, of course, George Floyd in 2020. and people were brave in going out in public to protest this and such. And so I started watching children in those protests. And this one I absolutely love. I think this one was actually in Flint. And she was like just yelling and walking and just like, it was the expression on her face just killed me. Loved it. But so you had these children that were fighting for their own existence in our own country. So you had all these things piling up. This is a piece I did with some of those drawings and handmade paper. And then I did a series of postcards from the Edge of Forever, where I took those same drawings and handmade paper. This is a drowned. Again, the drawings are within the life jackets. Here is the border where the child was in a dog kennel. And then, so I started doing these installations with the children, and this is war. And so I embroidered a gas mask, as one does. And it's rather important. It's a Russian gas mask. And considering that Syria is a proxy war between the U.S. and Russia, among other things, plus a horrible ruler, that was a gas mask, Russian made, which historically the relationship between Russia and Syria was very strong. And this is actually a 1940s American Army helmet. And this is actually a remnants of an old milk house. So where they keep ice and store milk. So I was tearing that apart for someone, and it ended up in my figure installation there. It is a bugger to transport and install though. And then again, a gas mask. And this one actually I started before the pandemic, and I was thinking of the toxins and horrible stuff we do out of our environment, waste and such, and what would playing outside look like in the future. And then, of course, then with the COVID, this is from a show, I had a solo show in Mount Pleasant, summer of 2020. So very much this one became pandemic too. And actually, all my figures in that show wore masks. So wore blue masks or whatever. Well, in this case, he has his own oxygen and such. But, and then, again, gas mask made into an elephant. And then bulletproof, as I mentioned. Of course, with Trayvon Martin and violence against especially young black men, or black men, period. I was also thinking of the violence done to them in the classroom. These are Suffer the Little Children, Homelessness, and Food Insecurity. So homelessness, living in a suitcase here, and food insecurity. Throwaway, embroidering a trash bag. Children in foster homes when they move homes, they're given a trash bag to put all their belongings in. So they don't even have the dignity of a bag. And there's actually some organizations where you can donate to, or you can donate bags to, and suitcases to, for foster children. And then we bring to Weightbearer and Almost Immune. My first figure that I started, in 2020, I started embroidering masks. My husband was called back to work as a essential worker, which didn't make me happy. And he would bring home, pull the masks out every day, and I'm like, gotta do something with those. And so I started embroidering them. I would look up the stats every evening, and it's usually the stats from the previous day for Michigan, making it that, microcosm and local microcosm of what's happening everywhere. And so I would embroider the date, I would embroider how many reported cases for the day, how many deaths, and then how many total that have been reported. And these are all recorded cases. But so I get asked, what are you going to do with all those? Don't know, I'm embroidering them. I have to embroider them. And so listening to the leader at the time talk about the pandemic, he said that children, they're almost immune. I'm like, okay. Got out my embroidery and started, and I embroidered the child's jacket that he's almost immune. And he was the first one that I used the masks with. And yeah, you can see this one's 9/1/20. And this would be the last one I would have put on. So all of these would have been before that. And then as I finished him, I think I was driving home one day and said, what if I still use the scrubs? And that really resulted in Weightbearer here. And so between the two, there's over 2 years worth of masks there. These aren't all the masks. I continued embroidering them to almost when they stopped recording the numbers. So I ended up stopping a little before that. But so I would, as I'm embroidering all these stats and numbers, you're thinking about, there's a person and a name behind each of these numbers. And then all these masks. And then the fact that these masks the blue masks are really placebos. They're designed to keep things, they're not designed to necessarily keep everything out. So the fact that, these were the standard, what everyone was wearing, and they protected some but really did not protect totally. So this idea of protection and the person behind all these numbers, and all this weight, the people that were there taking care of, and even as they suffered or caught or even died, taking care of these people, and it almost becomes a shield that he's wearing. He's wearing protective garb here, but protecting for what? So yeah, it's a lot of things thinking about with that. And then for this project, they asked me if I would create another one like that. And I'm like, well, it took me 3 years to embroider all those masks. I don't think I really could. Besides the fact they're not reporting numbers anymore. And so we were thinking, Tetta and I were thinking and brainstorming, and we thought, well, what happens if we had other people embroider the names of either themselves or someone that they know or a relative that was affected by COVID in some way. And so Tetta started getting people in the rounds to embroider. There are names on there, but she's like, well, some people were just embroidering dates or these other things on it. There's names. I'm like, well, they embroidered what they needed to embroider. That's not an issue. But with that one, I began thinking about the idea of the name, because the name, before I was embroidering the numbers, and some of the, you can see some more of the numbers are here, the ones that didn't make it on the other one. But again, behind each of those numbers is a name. And so I got to thinking about that power of having the actual names on this figure. And so she has, I don't know how many people participated. Ted just gave me several stacks of masks to sew on her. And then this piece I did, it was in a show at Delta College, and the Weightbearer was in this show too. These are photos from here. But there's 100 of these masks, and they're hung in a grid. And these, for that show, I was thinking as well that, okay, I recorded those that were reported, but what about those that weren't? Or those that weren't diagnosed correctly, or whatever. So there was way more people affected and dying from COVID than what was in the numbers. So these became the unconfirmed deaths. And these are masks that are dipped in beeswax and then formed over the bottom, where you would wear a mask formed over the bottom of the face. Yeah, my husband had beeswax in his beard. And then often boats show up somewhere in related. Boats are a very powerful image. They're used in so many cultures as a metaphor or as a belief of moving to the afterlife. A lot of water, crossing water. The Norse and Vikings, water burials. If they also buried boats as well as set them up and burn them. You have similar beliefs about, what would Greek, down the river. So many belief systems have boats as this this vehicle to take you into the afterlife. And it's also this way of honoring those that are passing or in the process of passing. So the boats had to be there as well. So there she is. That's my last one. Yeah. So I'd like to open it up to questions, or do you have stories, or oh, I actually didn't stay on time. That's very, very rare for me. But yeah, I mean, questions or stories or, yeah. Yes, sir.
Hello. Thank you so much for your presentation. A question for the piece that you have showing on the screen, but behind you. Is the reason why you stuck to medical masks? Because I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of people were making their own, using cloth. I know I used that, 'cause that's what I was told to do.
Yeah, I made my own too.
Yeah. I'm just curious if that other aspect got into these kind of projects and how that works. Because those were said to be not safe after a while, so they were just a placebo effect, essentially.
I actually looked up in how to make them so that they weren't placebos. So I had three, if you had non-woven pellet in there, and so I'd have 3 levels of pellet in between the two. So yeah, no, I had full masks. Yeah, I love my masks. Yes, because these came directly out of my husband coming home with masks. So they were, many of them were used by my husband. So, which really freaked out a couple people when I was talking to someone online, and they're like, why are you using used ones? So because that's important. And oh, but the germs and it's dangerous and all this. And I'm like, oh, not anymore. But it's yeah, I wash them. But no, the fact that they were used was important. Not all of them have been used though. This one has some new ones on it. But yeah, then I got people saying, hey, you wouldn't need some more masks? But yeah, that's why it's those blue masks.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi. Hopefully not. Okay, there we go. Yeah, I was actually meant to be more of an observer here today, taking photos, but I'm mostly curious, what was your experience emotionally creating these different situations, and
Yeah.
how, because to me, I mean, I'm getting chills. I'm like, part of it would be like a cathartic thing, but
Mhm.
I'm just curious about if that ever deterred you, or if it like encouraged you to continue going with it.
Yeah, like I mentioned, sometimes I wish I could make pretty pictures. But yeah, no, it's not easy, and I deal with a lot, as you can see, I deal with a lot of difficult ideas and events and people hurting, and then looking at children, they're the innocent among us, and of course the reference, if you don't know, for suffer the little children comes from New Testament. Jesus saying, suffer the little children, come unto me. And, but suffer the little children, suffer takes on many different layers, not exactly what Jesus meant. So yeah, I mean, it's very heavy stuff, and there's times where I couldn't do it. So I mean, there's times where I was embroidering masks for 3 days, or for the past 3 days where I didn't embroider. I mean, yeah, there was times, I was doing those drawings almost every night. I don't even know how many I have. So I mean, that was very difficult. And then reading the story, some of them they didn't even have the information, or who the person was, or who the child was, or like with the trans individuals who had been killed, a lot of the information about them were dead naming them, or misgendering them and such. So yeah, it is hard. And like I said, the typing in dead children was not a good search. And so I very much, like with those drawings, stayed away from drawing those that were killed, besides the trans series. But yeah, with the children, there's only a few of them that I drew where the children had died. But yeah, it's very heavy. It is somewhat cathartic. I'm doing something, that I, even if it's just embroidering the masks, even when I didn't know what was going to happen or what I was going to do with the masks, it was still that activity of doing something. And if nothing else, I was recording. I mean, you can't even access those numbers anymore. So, I mean, those numbers are yeah, they're gone. So, there's no, I mean, there may be records of them somewhere, but they're not available. So, if nothing else, I was recording. So yeah, there was some, yeah, so I mean, it is very heavy, but I also feel like I need to do it. It's something I need to do. I mean, I need to make anyways. My hands hurt if I don't make, but so I have to be making, but I also am very much way too consciously aware of the horrors of our world to ignore them. And I think what I find is, I know it's sometimes, defense mechanism and such, but there's also a willful ignorance that people, close off what's out there. So I try in some way that, it can, this is happening, but also in a way that they approach it differently than like the evening news or something like that. Because art does, physically, our brain understands and interprets visuals and art using very different parts of the brain than any other communication. So you can bypass some of those biases and such through art that you can't necessarily through words. Or you can do the same, with other art forms like drawing and writing. They all access different parts of the brain, so and process in different ways. So sometimes it can affect people in very different ways than just like saying, "Hey, there's a war in Syria and children are dying," So having that more visceral experience and understanding and that empathy is something that. Yeah, so I mean, I cried while doing it, but it is something that I need to. Once in a while, I do something fun.
Thank you for that, all of this. I was hoping that you might pull out a little bit more your thoughts about the variety of ethical implications of your work. I've been thinking about this a lot, but this whole idea of what it means to be face to face, and having looked at some of the faces or missing faces and pieces of faces and your art in the gallery. I would just love to hear your thoughts about what is at stake in face-to-face interactions or the absence of faces.
So, I'm not sure I'm understanding, but so like the use of.
I mean, you could take it in any way you want to go, but the way that I've been thinking about it, which is not meant to be the way I would imagine you're thinking about it, but so Emmanuel Levinas and his ethics kind of talks about the phenomenology of an encounter between human beings, and that the most legible part of that encounter is the face. For other folks, it might be the voice. But there are all kinds of, but the ability to interpret someone as human and therefore in need of the mutuality, the ethical mutuality of recognition, for him comes down to the face.
And I very specifically have not included the face. And that is a very purposeful choice. Not on all my work. The current work I'm doing do have faces. But the Suffer Little Children and such, and the Weightbearers, faces also make you an individual. You put a face on something and it's a person, it's an individual standing there. Whereas if you think of like the women figures from history, from the Paleolithic, with like the woman of Willendorf and such, they had no faces. And that was a way of making them all fertility or all women versus a specific woman. And so that idea of these figures could be anyone was very important to me, instead of giving them a personal identity. Where it's interesting too, because I started with drawing faces, right? I started with looking at these pictures and drawing the faces, and really with these portraits, and the sculptural work that came out of it very specifically did not have faces. And then with the masks coming in with the pandemic, it was giving the illusion of a face, but still no face. So, and many times I would employ a hood, so there would be no head either. It would just be implied by the shapes. This one in specifically, I wanted the head filled with crackers, potato chips, and you know, unhealthy food type things. So the head became very important in that one. But this one is a really good example that I wanted it to be all the people that are being threatened like this and you know, can't walk the streets with a Skittles and a tea without being shot. I didn't want to make it a specific person. I didn't want to make this Trayvon Martin. Because there is the ethic, well, like with that, making it a specific person like Trayvon, I'm alluding to it, but then also the Skittles and the Arizona tea became a symbol of, so it kind of went beyond him, and because of him. But there is that ethics in depicting a person without their permission, which I'm very conscious of. But there's also this idea, and something I'm always thinking about is who is able to represent who. I mean, it's very different for a white woman to make this figure referring to the plight of black men. It'd be very different coming from someone of color. And I'm very much aware of that. And like, who has the right or the voice? And I mean, and if you're looking at history, of course, I come from people who colonized everyone. So, and I'm German, so that's even more fun. So I mean, I'm from the privileged class just because of the color of my skin. And so I'm very conscious of, do I have the right to tell this story? And why, or how, or do I? And so those are always things that are going through my head okay, I can do it, but should I? You know, and that's not something a lot of us necessarily think about. At least the average person out on the street doesn't necessarily think about. And also this idea of othering. I definitely don't want to create, this is the other, or you know, the other savage and the other, we were just looking at savage propaganda in my art history class. So that's why it came to mind. I don't want to other or look at them or stereotype or anything like that too. So these are always things I'm thinking about. And I really don't exhibit the portraits that I drew. Those were really a process for me to get, and get me to where I needed to be. I did exhibit the trans portraits that I did on my campus as part of a Trans Day of Remembrance installation that I did with students. But yeah, so those are always things that I think about.
So thank you, thank you, thank you so much. I wanted to give everyone 15 minutes before the next panel to like breathe and process some of that. Part of what we're trying to recognize in this is that it does mean confronting really complex and deeply emotional topics. And so I want to reinforce that there is that respite space, that low sensory room. There's also, right, the exhibition where you can actually engage with Weightbearers and messages at the end. Oh my gosh, help me. Anyway, messages to the unconfirmed, and also to say that we invite you to embroider or to use marker to create a mask in honor of someone who you know, who you are connected with, who's been impacted by COVID. That piece will be added to the figure, the second figure that we described, and added to those sleeves. So please take an opportunity throughout today. We've connected very closely, I think, as a group with those who were here yesterday with the butterflies. But I want to also make sure that we take time to honor those who have been impacted by COVID using the mask. So thank you so much.
And you are more than welcome, you're more than welcome to touch the figure. I'm the one that sets off alarms at museums, right? I'm a sculptor for a reason, and I use fibers for a reason, I have to touch everything. But yeah, so feel free to touch her, she's fine.
Yeah. Anyone who was there for the touch lecture last night, please go and touch the mask.